Hello and welcome to This Sporting Planet, your global view of sport. From the United States, I'm Todd Harris.
From Singapore, I'm Edward Russell.
And from London, I'm Natalie Sawyer. On This Sporting Planet, this episode, it's part 3 of our review of 2024. And we're embracing the European summer with the Paralympic and Paralympic Games, UEFA Euro 2024, and a little bit of Copa America as well. So as you might have guessed, there are 2 review episodes to listen to already. So if you haven't heard those yet, then why not check out your favourite podcast provider or even watch them on YouTube. Ed and Todd, of course, for anyone living in London, the summer is awash with sporting occasions. We've obviously got the Wimbledon, we've got the Open, Royal Ascot. We've also got, obviously, before Wimbledon, the French Open. There's the Tour de France as well. There's loads of events. It feels like it's really manic for anyone living over here in Europe, for example. When I'm considering all those events I've just mentioned, are they as important to you as they are perhaps to all of us over here, Ed?
Yeah, definitely here in Asia. Well, I mean, here in Singapore, it is perpetually summer, so summer sports do very well indeed. But no, I mean, in terms of tennis tournaments, I've been lucky enough to go to all 4 of the Grand Slams, but there is something... There's that je ne sais quoi, isn't there, about Roland Garros and the prestige of Wimbledon, and that really translates well over here, particularly because the time difference is a little bit kinder for those 2 European tournaments than for the US Open. Sorry about that, Todd. Also, when it comes to the tennis this year, China had some really big hopes, especially in terms of Zheng Qinwen, who made the final of the Australian Open, of course, wasn't able to really translate that into Wimbledon and Roland Garros, but of course won that Olympic gold, something we'll get onto a little bit later on as well. And Rohan Bopanna, just sticking with tennis, won his first major doubles title, becoming the oldest first-time number 1 at the age of 43 alongside his partner, Matt Ebden. So really big interest in tennis, both in terms of the Chinese and the Indian players. And the Tour de France, I think we're going to get onto that a little bit later on, because I really want to go into the fact that the Tour de France Prudential Criterium was held here in Singapore, on the streets of Singapore, much like Formula One's held here, in fact. And Sir Mark Cavendish signed off from his illustrious cycling career right here in Singapore.
And I know one thing that's great about it is you talk about the summer. And I think for Americans, or in North America, South America, Central America, what makes it nice with the time change is that the fact that we get to wake up to all these great sports. So you've got breakfast at Wimbledon, you have the Tour de France you wake up to, and right out of the gate at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., you're up and you can watch these great sporting events. Lay in bed and do it, or have it over your first cup of Morning Joe, and really get an opportunity to start your day with sports. And is there any other better way to start your day? So the Tour de France, you get the epic views of that beautiful country. Wimbledon, the prestige and the romance that goes along with that, the French Open, all these other things. But let's be honest, Natalie and Edward, this was really all just about hors d'oeuvres, as we say, the lead up to the big event of the summer, the appetizer for the big event in Paris.
Yes, which we'll get onto in just a moment. But I think we need to discuss the elephant in the room, these 2 shirts that I've got behind me, because looking at both of your backdrops is so much better than mine. I had to bring in something sporting memorabilia-wise, and being a Brentford fan, who aren't doing too badly in the Premier League, this is what I had to bring in, some shirts to honour my beloved Brentford. So here we've got Ollie Watkins, and it's signed by the great man himself when he was part of our championship team that nearly got up when he was there. We lost in the playoff final. It was that same year, in fact. So that was when we lost to Fulham in the playoff final. Not that particular shirt, but that season. And then this one is a nod to our first ever kit. So it wasn't so much white, but on the trim of the sleeve, it's kind of got a claret and blue and an orange, and that was our first ever kit. So that's why I brought that one in as well. But I had to do something when you've got all your
stuff. We call that throwback.
Throwback. We'll say throwback, shall we?
Well, you know what? I thought we were staying neutral, Natalie. My ones are kind of like game-specific or tournament-specific. You've shown your allegiance, so I'm going to have to get the Arsenal shirts out for the next episode, I think.
I think that's fair. I think we should just nail our colours to the mast and just be honest with our listeners and our viewers as well. But I saw you had your mascot. I've got mine too. And it was a fabulous, fabulous summer in Paris, where it was the centre of attention for global sport. Todd, just first of all, what on earth are you wearing?
Well, it's not a signed jersey, but it is signed by Mr. Ralph Lauren, and I was lucky enough to get my hands on one of these. I almost feel embarrassed wearing it. These are the Team USA opening ceremony jackets that they wore, and Ralph Lauren always sponsors and outfits the athletes, and what a great event it was. I think that entry, you guys, I know where you were during this, but watching them not in a stadium but come down the Seine was so impressive. It was rainy, the weather didn't really cooperate, but it was at night. But what a grand spectacle. I mean, we can get into all the other things that were going on along that river on the banks and some of the other things that were taking place, but that was a grand spectacle. What a way to start off the Olympic Games.
Yeah, I got to say, Todd, I don't recognize that jacket dry and without a poncho over the top of it, because
Exactly.
That's how everyone was on the boat. Yeah, I went a little bit overboard. Sorry, I got the Paris T-shirt. I've got. I think we were talking before we started, Natalie. Our accreditations with the different country pins on them, and then I've even gone right to the mug. Look at that. Is that?
Oh, you did.
Before
they saw
coffee,
you coming in the merchandise store, didn't they?
Oh, they were rubbing their hands with glee when I came through the door. Yeah.
But do you know what? That opening ceremony, very different. Obviously, the first time it wasn't held within a stadium. For the uniqueness of it, you just had to watch it from the start until the finish because you had no idea what was going to happen. Obviously, the Lady Gaga appears, Celine Dion appears as well. It was wonderful. It was a really, really clever way of staging an opening ceremony, I thought.
I felt so bad. I don't know about you two, but I arrived in Paris about a week or so before to film all these kind of feature episodes and build up. And it was bright and sunny and hot every single day until the opening ceremony day itself. And of course, the very first time it's held outside a stadium, it absolutely pours. And within 5 minutes, everyone's saying, should have held it in the stadium. This is why I've always done it in a stadium.
Well, and you had all kinds of celebrities that turned up for it. I mean, who doesn't want to go to Paris for the summer and rub shoulders with the world's greatest athletes? For my host network, NBC, they brought out the big gun, Snoop Dogg, and he became almost a mascot for NBC. He was everywhere. I was covering skateboarding, and he showed up at skateboarding. And I remember there was a shot of him and Tony Hawk, and I just thought, bird, dog.
Well, I was just going to say, with Snoop Dogg, I mean, he brought that celebrity status.
Yeah.
Not that it needs it, because it's the Olympics. It's already incredible. These are the greatest athletes on earth competing. But I remember being at the Stade de France, and he turned up one night, and it was as though everyone just kind of forgot what was going on the track because he was there. It was Snoop Dogg. So I kind of hope to see that. Well, I'm no doubt he'll be involved in the LA games, but surely he's going to be flag bearer. Surely.
It's his backyard.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think he took most of the NBC budget, didn't he, for that games, Todd? Was there any left for you?
I was doing it out of the kindness of my heart. I don't know what happened to the rest of the money, but yeah, he was paid handsomely, and but he's such a. It wasn't even. He was such a big part of the broadcast, but it really showed that he loved it. I mean, it was genuine. It wasn't artificial. He just loved being with the athletes. He became friends with so many of them, and so for him to show up at a venue, I know in our production meetings, it was always discussed. Okay, who are we going to focus on? Storylines, yada yada yada. And Snoop Dogg will be there. So that was always part of it. If he's going to show up at your venue, obviously you have to get some cutaways of him because all the athletes wanted to get their picture with him. I mean, obviously you want to win a gold medal, but if you win a gold medal and you get a picture with Snoop Dogg, trifecta.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do with him in LA in 4 years' time. But yeah, that opening ceremony, absolutely incredible. So much going on. I think it was about 4 hours. There were silver horses, can dancers, heavy metal, parkour, fire coming out of left, right, and center. Celine Dion atop the Eiffel Tower. I do love the fact that it was so intrinsically French, wasn't it? It was, without meaning to, anger any French listeners, it was rather self-indulgent, rather overinflated, went on for a little bit too long. And it really just set things up. And I think the other great thing about it being outside the stadium was this whole idea of they will be bringing the Olympics to France. They'll be bringing it outside of the stadiums, bringing it to the people. And that started in the opening ceremony and then carried through right throughout the games. And I think one of my residing memories of the games and why it was so successful is just the way that they really incorporated the venues into the city, whether it was beach volleyball at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, which could have done with a little bit more shade, I must add, because that's where I got particularly sunburned. 3x3 basketball, skateboarding, breaking, that was all done at the famous La Place de la Concorde, one of the most famous public squares in Paris. That's where all the cool sports were held. Yeah. And then you got fencing at the historic Le Grand Palais, built all the way back in 1900 for the Universal Exhibition. Here it is in 2024, hosting fencing at the Olympic Games. It was impossible to escape the Olympics in Paris. Everywhere you went, it was right there. And I absolutely loved that.
Do you guys think that they've set a bar too high? I mean, now, obviously, Los Angeles will be the next summer games after the Winter Games in Italy. But, I mean, who better to follow Paris than Los Angeles and Hollywood? But I feel like every year, every winter summer games, they take the bar to the next level. And I think France really did a fantastic job. Paris did a fantastic job. Every venue embraced it. As Edward said, it was such a French production, and they did a fantastic job. I mean, despite the opening ceremony in the rain, which I think actually lent itself to it with the lighting and all that stuff, I thought it was so cool to see a LeBron James in a poncho carrying the American flag, and all these great superstars with their national athletes with them on those boats. I thought that was a magnificent gesture. But I just wonder, Natalie, have they raised the bar too high? And obviously, who better to follow Paris than Hollywood?
Well, this is what I was about to say, because don't we have to go back to, it's all your fault. Don't we have to go back to LA 1984 when you had all the glitz and glamour then? So I think ever since 84, everyone's wanted to outdo each other. So yeah, I think, well, I'm really intrigued, obviously, what's going to happen in LA next time around and see how much better you can make it. But at one point, we're going to get to a point where it's like, there's no more we can do. This is it. This is the level.
Two words. Tom Cruise. That's all I got to say.
We were waiting for him, weren't we, in the closing ceremony? Yeah. I'm interested to see, Todd, how are they going to make this LA Games carless? Because from what I've heard, public transport in LA, absolutely terrible.
It's terrible. People don't do it. I am a native of Los Angeles, and I can tell you right away, people love their cars. It's just the easiest way to get around. And I think we've had a couple instances where freeways have been shut down, and it's traffic Mageddon. It is just... But they get around it. They figure it out. And I think they will figure it out in the next 4 years, how to get public transportation, get people to embrace public transportation, because that will really be the best way to get around. Obviously, people are going to still go about their lives working and things like that. But I think for those 15 to 17 days with the world's greatest athletes come to the Southland, I think it'll be very interesting. Weather and transportation will be big stories, but I don't have any doubt that they're going to put on an amazing show. I mean, obviously it's Hollywood and they're going to put on an amazing show, but I think it'll be interesting to get that many people in that tight of space around for 2.5 weeks time.
Can we talk about sporting highlights?
Yes, but let me just let our listeners, our viewers know exactly what happened in terms of the medal table, because, you know, as much as it is about individuals, it is also about a team event. And in terms of the ones leading the way, yes, it was the United States. Todd, congratulations. 40 gold medals, but 126 medals in total put you top of the list, alongside China with 40 gold medals, but then they had 91 medals in total. Japan came third, Australia fourth, and France, the host nations, came away with 16 gold medals and 64 in total as well. But yes, let's talk about those highlights, shall we? Because there's plenty for us all, and hopefully they're quite varied as well. Go on, Ed. You tell us what yours was.
Yeah, I'll get to Southeast Asia in a bit, because they had a record-equaling Olympic Games. But I think for me, a couple of sporting highlights. One of them was, of course, to see Simone Biles back. We weren't sure whether we would ever see her again after Tokyo and those twisties. And she'd been seeing a therapist for 4 years. And you could tell that she just came out renewed and not necessarily back to seek vengeance, but just to have some fun. And the pressure wasn't on her shoulders, and she was really the lead of that team, and she just enjoyed every single minute, even when she wasn't on the apparatus, just standing on the sidelines and cheering on the rest of her team. That was great to see. And I love that the fact the Olympics always brings your attention to sports that you might not be so familiar about. So Todd, for example, you know, badminton being compared to curling.
Love badminton.
Judo, I've got to say, not a massive pet sport of mine, but Teddy Riner, French judoka, French judo legend. He was one of the guys who lit the flame, actually, at the very end of the opening ceremony. And I remember, as you both know, when you cover the Olympics, you don't have a lot of time to get out and about. But there was one night when we had time for dinner, and I was walking out trying to find somewhere to eat, and the streets were just absolutely empty. And I was like, what is going on? You know, was everyone told to evacuate the city and I wasn't aware, and it's going to be some 28 days later type zombie situation? But no, everyone was just crowding into any restaurant that they could find to watch Teddy Riner, who was fighting. And he really brought Paris to a standstill. And he is just a legend that I didn't realize until I got to Paris, and he won a couple more gold medals. But he just encapsulates, I think, for me, how much people get behind their own national heroes, and how much a sports star who might not be on the same level as LeBron James or Simone Biles can just capture the public imagination.
Well, that's the same of Leon Marchand in the swimming pool as well for France. He was, I felt, one of the poster boys for the Olympics. I mean, he came into it as, a 22-year-old. He is coached by Michael Phelps's coach. So, he's obviously got the pedigree because they've seen something in him to work with him out in the United States. But still, he's coming in. Would he rise to the occasion or would he sink under that pressure? My goodness, did he rise to the occasion? What was it, 4 goals that he won? Yeah. Breaking Michael Phelps's records a couple of times in the pool. I think he also got a bronze as well in the relay, the 4x100 meter medley relay. There are sometimes days where you have incredible sporting prowess. And if you go back to London 2012, we had Super Saturday when Jessica Ennis-Hill, Greg Rutherford, Mo Farah won gold in the athletics track. That, to be able to kind of capture a spirit of the games, that was the spirit of the games for London 2012. But for me, Leon Marchand and what he achieved in the pool for France kind of made me think it kind of summed up that motto of fraternity that they have as part of the French motto, don't they? So I just kind of felt he was brilliant in what he was able to do. And I remember seeing a massive skyscraper with his face, the poster of him on this huge skyscraper in Paris. And I'm thinking, wow, you are putting a lot of pressure on this man. But boy, did he deliver, I thought.
You talk about filling a vacuum, and you think of who's going to replace Michael Phelps. I don't know if that's possible, but Marchand certainly lived up to the billing, as you said, Natalie. Once you put his face on that big of a skyscraper, the pressure is definitely on. And I thought he stepped up to the plate and smashed it. Ed, to your point, Simone Biles, she comes with so much. I mean, her husband plays professional football in the NFL. He left training camp with the Chicago Bears to come over and support his wife with the blessing of that team. And so that was kind of a big story. To athletics, always the showdown at the 100, the women's 200, and then the relays. There's always drama there. But for me, being an action sports person, I go back to skateboarding. Obviously, it's only been around for 2 iterations of the Summer Games, but it was a great story for an athlete named Yuto Horigome from Japan in the men's street competition. He was the defending gold medalist in that, and the Americans were coming on very strong with Jagger Eaton and Nyjah Huston, both world rock stars in skateboarding. Horigome had a slump mid-season, but he came back to defend that title in Paris to win the gold medal. Jagger Eaton finishing second with Nyjah Huston getting the bronze medal. But it's those smaller sports that don't get as much attention, but there's always some drama that plays out. And I thought that was just so incredible. And the backdrops you guys talked about, Place de la Concorde, Eiffel Tower, it was just amazing. I swear, every shot it seemed like they took, there was an Eiffel Tower. And I wondered, how many Eiffel Towers are there? Because it seems like they always found a way to get the Eiffel Tower in one of the shots. But just the other day, I was at the USA Track and Field Awards, the Night of Legends, and it gave me the opportunity to chat with some of the Olympic stars there this year. And one person I was fortunate enough to bump into on the red carpet was Olympic gold medalist Gabby Thomas. And here's a little bit of our chat. Todd Harris here with This Sporting Planet, 3-time Olympic gold medalist Gabby Thomas. First of all, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any plans?
Well, I'm here celebrating with my USA Track and Field community.
Tell me about Paris, and especially the opening ceremony, going down that river with all those amazing athletes on Team USA.
Well, I actually sat that one out. I was very tunnel vision, hyper-focused on my competition. So I watched it on TV, and it looked incredible.
FOMO?
Not much, no. No, but they did an amazing job with that. I was really impressed. It was very unique to Paris, and it was a great way to kick off the Olympics.
And what was the experience like the whole time you were in Paris, the purple track, the whole vibe?
Everything was incredible. They did an amazing job hosting. The purple track was stunning. We were all so excited to run on it. And the turnover was incredible because I remember going to watch the rugby matches days before competing in that venue. So it was really cool.
Did you get a chance to see other venues? Anything else that you really wanted to see when you had down days?
Rugby was definitely number one on my list. Huge Ilona Maher fan, and I got to support those girls, and they came and supported us on the track as well, and it was really fun.
So after it's all over, you've got 3 gold medals in your pocket, you're leaving Paris. What's life like going back to normal?
It has not been normal yet. I don't know if there ever will be another normal, but it's been very busy, and I'm just really grateful for all the opportunities and people that I've gotten to meet.
Are you already hyper-focused on Los Angeles?
No. We actually have World Championships next summer, so I am very focused on that. And we started training 2 weeks ago.
And how many people asked you this last question? What does your future hold? What do you want to do?
I want some more Olympic medals. I'm looking ahead LA 2028, and then after that, we'll see where the world takes me. But I'm still very dedicated to healthcare, so hopefully working or running a nonprofit someday.
any chance we can get you to run for president of the United States?
Probably not in this lifetime, but
Happy birthday.
thank you.
And guys, let me just say, she is that graceful, that much poise. She's such an impressive person. Obviously, you don't get into Harvard just by good looks, but Harvard graduate, University of Texas graduate school. I wasn't kidding in a sense. I would love to see her run for president of the United States. She is that impressive.
I do love the fact you asked her what's next. She could literally do anything in the world and still be fantastic at it.
She's so personable. That's how it comes across. And you get contrasting athletes, don't you? When you get, and I mentioned him in a previous podcast, Noah Lyles, who is all about the showmanship, the overconfidence that he has. I mean, he delivers on the track, of course, but he's so contrasting to Gabby Thomas, who no doubt has a ruthless nature, because you don't get to where you've got to as an athlete unless you have a bit of a ruthlessness behind you. But she just delivers it in a very, very different way. And even when she runs on the track, again, she is so graceful. I think she is just a fabulous athlete. And I love the fact you've told us she should run for president. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But that, of course, was one of... Well, she won a number of medals, didn't she? But
Three
40 gold medals, yeah. We talked about the 40 gold medals for the USA. Tell us, Todd, how do they rank the table in the US? Because I think it's a little bit different to how everyone else does it.
Yeah, I think on the whole, most of the world likes to say gold first, then total. And I think for the U.S. team, and this is just my take, is I think they just like to see the total number of medals first of all. Obviously, if you get a gold, silver, or a bronze, you're one of the three best in the world. And I think one of the things that's interesting as a journalist, they always like to say, never refer to someone as a former Olympian. Once an Olympian, always an Olympian. So I think the cachet that goes along with not only being on Team USA, but possibly taking a medal of any color is massive. And so I think that's why the Americans usually focus on total numbers of medal won, because they can take that back to sponsors and say, listen, we're going to bring home a medal. It might not be a gold. It's going to be a silver. It's going to be a bronze. It's still going to be a colored medal, and you'll be excited for them. But I don't know. I just think there's a different take as far as medals go. Gold is nice. Obviously, that's the ultimate goal, but winning a medal is such a massive achievement.
Yeah, I should say elsewhere, golds often are the preference, aren't they, Ed?
Yeah, well, of course, in this part of the world, lots to celebrate, Natalie. 3 of the top 4 nations on the medal tally coming from Asia Pacific, China in second, Japan in third, and Australia in fourth. But I do have to reserve a special mention for Southeast Asia, who equaled their best medal haul at a single Olympics with 5 golds, 3 silvers, and 8 bronzes, as the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore made the podium with a few standout performances. The Philippines' best Olympic outing was fueled by a couple of pocket dynamos below 1.6 meters. Of course, the 1.5 meter gymnast Carlos Yulo creating history with his double triumph in the men's vault and floor exercise. I was very lucky to be in the venue for that. And he had so many fans cheering him on. Not just Philippines fans, but French fans as well, who really got behind him. The 1.58 meter boxers, Ira Villegas and Nesty Petesio, claimed bronze as well. The 2 boxers there. Moving on to Indonesia, they clinched Olympic gold for the first time outside of badminton. That's normally the sport that they do very well in at the Olympics. Jonathan Christie and Anthony Ginting surprisingly eliminated from badminton in the group stage. So it was down to sport climber Vedrick Leonardo. What a fantastic sport that was, by the way, sport climbing. He won the men's speed gold in 4.75 seconds. That is seriously speedy. For Thailand, Panapak Wonpatanakit retained her Taekwondo 49 kilos gold, but there was also significant attention on the Thai weightlifters, who proved their pedigree with 2 silvers and 1 bronze. Badminton continued to bring in the medals for Malaysia with another 2 bronzes in the men's singles and men's doubles. And for Singapore, Max Mader, the 17-year-old kite foiling world champion, won his country its first Olympic medal in 8 years on the same day that it celebrated its 59th birthday, National Day, which is kind of like Independence Day, I guess, in other countries around the world. It's the day where the country celebrates its birthday. And as luck would have it, the final was actually supposed to take place the day before, but there was not enough wind in Marseille in order to run the race. There was a lot of sun because I was standing on the beaches of Marseille waiting for Max to come home. He went out that day before and then came back within 5 minutes because his kite was just not inflating enough to get him anywhere. So it was moved a day further back. And of course, it gave Singapore 2 things to celebrate, not just their birthday, but a first Olympic medal in 8 years as well.
I wanted to also quickly mention someone that won a silver medal that we haven't mentioned, the Turkish shooter, Yusuf Dikec. I mean, what What a man.
What a
How
guy.
can you nonchalantly stand there when he, alongside he's playing in the mixed team event, wasn't he? I think it was the 10-meter pistol event. He's got his hand in his pocket. I mean, how could you see someone more relaxed than him? I think it was just, again, one of these standout moments from the Paris Games. I just felt like he deserved a mention. But what was also really unique about the Olympics and the Paralympics as well is there were 7 countries that won their first medals at a games, which I think is fabulous when we're talking about nations like St. Lucia and Dominica, Cape Verde, and many others, Nepal, Moldova, for example. I unfortunately couldn't stick around for the Paralympics, but again, it was another wonderful tournament, a wonderful couple of weeks of wonderful competitive sport. Todd, you were there. What was the flavour like when you were there for the Paralympics?
Natalie, I switched venues from the skateboarding and BMX from the Place de la Concorde over to the swimming venue. And to Ed's point earlier, it was a magnificent venue. It became a focal point. And I think the French did a fantastic job not trying to reinvent the wheel. Of course, the Olympics ended. They took a 10-day, 12-day break and then came back into the Paralympics and really kind of ran the program similar to what they did in the Olympics. And why not? If it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think they did a great job. The athletes came in seamlessly and just rolled right into their competition. And the French just said, you know what, take a deep breath, go see your family, get a little sleep, and then we're going to do it all over again. But you're talking over 4,400 athletes showed up, 169 delegations. And again, it was just an amazing, amazing event to be a part of in France.
Paris 2024 Paralympics featured a record number of female competitors, more medal events for women than ever before, and it broke ticket sales as well. 2.6 million tickets sold. And Natalie, you were talking about the first-time nations who won medals at these Olympics and Paralympics. Shout out to the refugee team winning their first Paralympic title. Zake Kudadadi in para-taekwondo. Great to see her pick that up. And yeah, it really was just a fantastic event, and one which I think just did so well in continuing the spirit and just continuing that mood right through from one to the next. There wasn't a break. We just stayed in that sporting fever for a couple of months.
Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to catch up with first-time U.S. Paralympic athlete Ali Truwit. And if you don't know her story, it is absolutely amazing. She is a shark attack survivor, and she was a able-bodied athlete when she swam at Yale. And then her incident took place, and she turned her attention to the Paralympics. She is such an impressive young woman. Here's my conversation with Ali Truwit. So you graduate from Yale, and then you have your incident, your attack. How much of that do you remember, and how much do you think about it, or do you just try to put it out of your mind?
I remember a lot of it because I was conscious for the whole attack. So that was really hard for me at the start. And, I have recurring moments of grief or memories that pop back up. So it's definitely something that I'm not actively focused on thinking about every day, but life as an amputee forces you to confront that reality quite often.
When you were in the hospital after you were a medevac flight to Miami, how soon until you started thinking about getting back in the pool, so you started competing again? And when did Paralympics become a thing?
Yeah, I think in the hospital for me, what I realized those were really dark days. I had just gone through a shark attack, fighting to survive in the water, life-saving surgeries, blood transfusions, an amputation on my 23rd birthday. Yeah. They were really dark days and really hard and sad times. And I had a million questions about what my future was going to look like. But I also really wanted to center myself on the gratitude that I was alive and I was going to make the most of the second chance at life that I had been given. And so for me, that kind of dictated my mindset as I returned home from the hospital. And a big thing for me was, there's some of this stuff that I've lost in the attack, like my foot, that I'm never getting back. But there are pieces of it that I can fight for. And a big one was my love of the water. And leaving, after the attack, my latest memory of the sound of the water was one where I was fighting for my life. And so I didn't have a good, feeling associated with the water anymore. And
right.
I grew up on the water. I grew up as a swimmer. I love the water, like every form, shower, baths, pools. It was just like my happy place. And so I really wanted to fight to have that back. So truthfully, like the path to the Paralympics started with a quest to regain my love of the water, a quest to get some cardio in, which I was sorely missing, as a lifelong athlete. But it unfolded into the decision to delay my post-grad job and instead try to make the Paralympics, which I will say I acknowledged was a really ambitious goal with an absurd turnaround because trials were, just a year after the attack and
Right.
amputation. But one that I'm so grateful that I made because I truly believe having the goal of trying to make the Paralympics was the most healing decision I could have made for my recovery, my self-acceptance. It's completely expedited this healing journey for me.
You get through trials, you make the team, you watch the Olympics take place, so you see all the swimming happening at that amazing arena, La Défense, and then it's your turn. What was it like opening ceremony, being in the pool for the first time, or your whole experience in Paris?
That was the biggest stage I've ever competed on. And I will say, I think Paris did an absolutely incredible job at making that feel like the world stage that it was. Like opening ceremonies were surreal. And for me to think that a year before that, I was learning how to take my first steps on a prosthetic leg and so just in pain and in fear and worried about what my future was going to look like. Fast forward a year and I'm taking my first steps down the Champs-Elysees at opening ceremonies as a Paralympian. Like that is wild. So I think thinking about my own journey, also being surrounded by Team USA athletes and wearing my Team USA opening ceremonies gear, and all of it was just the most special moment. Leaving opening ceremonies and walking out to all of like hundreds and hundreds of Parisian supporters who had come out to cheer for us on our walk back to the bus after it was over. Like all of the moments of opening ceremonies were insanely just special and made us feel so welcomed and celebrated. And then I felt like that energy carried through the entire meet, the entire time in Paris for me. That arena was incredible. And to see, packed stands of 20,000 fans coming out for the Paralympics is so amazing. And it made us so excited to race and to perform too.
All right, so you leave Paris, great experience, Team USA, the swimming was amazing, you guys were awesome. And then not many people leave Paris with an invitation from the biggest movie star in the world, Tom Cruise. Can you please tell us about the invite you got from Tom Cruise?
That was such a treat. He's a big athlete himself. He does all his own stunts. He's a huge, I think he really respects sports in general. And he surprise called me the night before my 400 freestyle. And he was so supportive, I think, saying, one, you've already won just by being there and by facing your loss the way that you have. And so really take that into your races. And then two, would you like to come after the Paralympics for a visit to set? And it was so cool, so generous, and so kind of him. And I can't even call it a dream come true because everything here I never even dreamed possible for myself.
Yeah.
The whole thing was so amazing.
So what was it like? Do you get a cameo in the next Mission Impossible?
I don't know. Maybe you need to work on that.
All right, but outside the pool, you've got a full-time job now. You're in the city. Tell me a little bit about also Truwit's Treats, because we really want to bring you on board as the official food sponsor of This Sporting Planet.
Oh my gosh, I will do that gladly. Truwit's Treats is my baking business that I started in recovery. I found the kitchen so therapeutic for me, so meditative. This place where I could just focus on what I was doing and not really think about doctor appointments I had coming up or different things that were stressing me out. And so I started baking a lot. And in the beginning, I would leave it all around the house. And my parents were like, you need to get this out of the house. We keep eating it. So I started giving it to everyone who was just making a difference in my life and helping me. Doctors, my swim coach, the lifeguards at the pool I trained at. And from there kind of unfolded into this baking business. And for me, I absolutely love it. Anytime I have a reason to bake is such a happy moment for me because it's just such freedom in the kitchen to be creative, to kind of relieve all of my stress of learning life as an amputee. So I would gladly do it. I have so much fun baking.
Okay, rapid fire. We're going to get you out here on this. Just a couple quick questions, quick answers. Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue.
It was so special. To think that I'm the second Paralympian and third amputee ever in that issue is absolutely amazing and makes me feel so honored to be alongside incredible Olympians as a Paralympian.
Explain this, your love of cheese balls.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is a long answer, but I'll give it. Basically, my mom, when we were little, if she would have a really bad day, we would come home and she'd be in a bubble bath watching a good TV show with a bucket of cheese balls, the Utz cheese balls. And we all associated like, oh, if you're having a bad day, like me and my three brothers, have some cheese balls. And it's true, like it's pretty impossible to be sad with cheesy orange dust all over your fingers. So growing up, we always had like in case of emergency bucket of cheese balls. And it kind of this year, like I have had so many cheese balls. The day of my surgery, they asked me what I wanted for my birthday dinner, and I was like, just a bucket of cheese balls. And then like every tearful moment this year, my mom will just bring over a little bowl of cheese balls. So I love them. I think it's really hard to be happy when you're licking orange dust off your fingers, and they're delicious and great.
Ali Truwit, thanks so much for your time. We look forward to watching your success in the future.
Thank you so much for having me.
And what do you think in terms of, well, in your regions, the sort of broadcast aspect of it? Because I know over here, Channel 4, the host broadcaster of the Paralympics, spoke about how they had 20 million viewers across all of their platforms, which was the biggest audience share for 12 years. It felt as though it was people over here, especially in England and in Britain, were really gripped by the Paralympics, just as similar as they were with the Olympics. So what was it like with all of you?
I know for NBC, they really expanded their coverage and brought in more hours than they did than the prior games and the prior Paralympics. It seemed like we were on the air constantly, whether it was on NBC, CNBC, USA Network, whatever it was. They really did not miss much at all because there was content there, not as much as the Olympics, but there was such great content there, whether it was on the track and the pool, across some of the different venues. It was just compelling television. And I think that was great content. And I think after the Paris Olympics ended, I think there was still hunger. I think there was still a big appetite for more incredible stories, more competition. And I think as far as NBC went, they did a great job. Really did not miss much at all.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think what helped was that our body clocks had already adjusted. Well, I was in Paris, but everyone who was watching in this part of the world had already adjusted to the time difference for the Olympics. They could just continue the same sleeping regime through to the Paralympics. Apparently, this was the very first time that they actually had to cap the number of media attending, which is great news. 1,000 they limited it to, and they said that they've had more rights holders than ever before broadcasting the Paralympic Games to record audiences. So I think we're really heading in the right direction, that broadcasters are treating the Paralympics in just the same way that they would the Olympics.
Well, just before the Olympics and Paralympics got underway in Paris, we had a small matter of the Copa America, and of course the Euro 2024 is taking place. We'll come to the European Championships in a moment, but first I wanted to mention Copa America, a huge tournament which was held across the USA. Now, this is a big event, and it was a nice opportunity for the U.S. to get prepped for the World Cup, which is coming in 2026 to Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. There'll be 16 cities across the U.S. and Canada and Mexico as they play host. However, for both the U.S. and Mexico and Copa America, for their national teams, it did not go the way they were hoping for. I think a lot of people had the anticipation that both those teams would make it into at least the quarterfinals, if not the semifinals. That did not happen. But we had a great tournament nonetheless, with Canada maybe being the biggest surprise, guys. They made it all the way to the third place game, losing to Uruguay in a shootout. Colombia and Uruguay, the brawl in the stands, that was one of the things that really kind of set it back. The security there was not great. Poor pitch conditions at some of the venues because of the monsoon rains. Of course, you had Messi Mania. And the U.S. poor play ultimately cost their manager, Greg Berhalter, his job. Jesse March, who was part of the U.S. effort, was not retained. And then he goes to Canada and takes them onto the semifinals. Another impressive performance, obviously, was Panama's play. But of course, the big prize went to Argentina, who took the title in a 1-0 victory over Colombia. With that match being played in Miami, it was the 16th title for Argentina. Now, the U.S., Mexico, and Peru not even making it to quarterfinals, which was a huge letdown. But again, it's an appetizer for the World Cup, which is coming in 2026. But the U.S. certainly feeling the heat. And what did they do? In September, they go out and find themselves a new coach, former Chelsea manager, Mauricio Pochettino. After the Americas exited from Copa, they had to do something. But for Argentina, congratulations to them. It was an amazing performance. And of course, guys, Messi Mania. You can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask on that, Todd, just in terms of the MLS during the 2024 season. I think Messi broke the record for the most assists in a single MLS game, 5 assists, broke the records for the most goal contributions in an MLS game. The leading goal scorer, if I'm right, in Inter Miami history, despite only joining them halfway through 2023. Yeah. How much is he contributing to the growth of US football? Because obviously that was the aim, spend all this money on, arguably the best player in the world ever, and it would bring people into the stadiums and eyes onto the TV. Has it worked?
Edward, you are dead on. If you bring Messi, they will come. I think the fact that that pink jersey, that iconic pink jersey for his squad in the MLS became the highest selling jersey, no question about it, was a big factor. I mean, they gave him a great deal. Let's be honest. They gave him a great deal. And David Beckham was part of luring him to South Beach, which is not a terrible place to live. But I think the fact that he is such an icon in the world, not just in the Americas, South America, Central America, in the world, was just such a big get for MLS. And then to have him play in Copa. Now, let's not forget, there's so many people that come to America to live who come from Central, Latin, South America. And so the fans really supported their home nations. You had so many people coming in from Panama, from Brazil, from Argentina, that just came to watch their teams play. And I think that's why it was such a big disappointment for the Mexican team. They expected to do so much better, as did the Americans. But again, Messi cures all. If Messi's in a game, it doesn't matter if you're a football, soccer fan or not, you will watch the greatest of all time. And I think Messi and Argentina delivered in a spectacular final.
So does a tournament like that whet the appetite for the World Cup in 2026?
I think it does, Natalie. And I think the fact that there's obviously some wrinkles to be ironed out for the Americans, the Canadians, and the Mexicans to get it right. It's the biggest, short of the Olympics, it's the biggest sporting event in the world. So with the World Cup coming to 3 host nations in 2026, I think the Americans will obviously work with FIFA, as will Mexico and Canada, the other host nations, and iron out those problems. I mean, the pitches have to be up to par. They have to be, Premier League standard. That's one thing. I think they're going to have to sort out security. You cannot have brawls, especially having brawls with athletes going into the stands, even if they are defending family and friends. And I think those are 2 of the big things. Obviously, there was some problems with transportation, getting people in and out, security lines. You just can't have those lines, especially in places like Arizona and Texas and Florida, where the heat is so oppressive. You got to be efficient in getting in. I think with the 2 years that they have to build up to that, I hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll get it all worked out.
Okay, so whilst that was happening in America, of course, all eyes in Europe were on Germany for the Euros. And it was Spain that came through to win this one as they beat England. Second successive heartbreak for the Lions. The 3 Lions once more as they lost 2-1 in that final in Berlin. A little bit ominous, I think it has to be said, about Spain, because the first time they won the Euros in this millennium, they then went on to win the World Cup and then the successive Euros as well. And this is a pretty decent Spanish team as well. It is their 4th title, an unprecedented 4th European Championship title as well. And they became the first team to win all 7 matches without needing a penalty shootout. Everyone always says you always have to win a penalty shootout in some tournament. Well, Spain certainly didn't. And they had to beat some pretty impressive pedigree along the way in previous World Cup winners. Italy, Germany, France, England, also the 2018 finalist Croatia as well. So this is a very impressive Spain side, as I say, that came through to win in that final. And as I say, I think it's a little bit ominous about this World Cup. They might be the nation to look out for, potentially, although perhaps not easy to travel over to America and get that win. But yeah, it was very, very impressive. And as you can imagine, this was a squad made up of quite a lot of youngsters, mixed with some experience in there, like Rodri from Manchester City, for example. One of the stars of the show, of course, was Lamine Yamal, who broke so many records, as he has been doing in La Liga, playing for Barcelona. And I'm sure we'll talk about him in a little bit more detail. But one of the things that stood out for me about this tournament was how I felt it was quite a leveller with a lot of the nations. You look at Georgia, for example, getting through to the knockout stages for the very first time. There was all these kind of unique stories. Slovenia as well doing particularly well as they reached the knockouts for the first time. Romania returned as well in this competition for, I think, first time since 2000. So it felt as though every nation could do something against each other. I mean, Georgia beat Portugal, in fact, in their last game to reach the knockout rounds. And I think, in fact, when you look at the group stages, there was only one team in the final round of matches that didn't really have anything to play for, and that was Germany. So I felt as though this competition was quite a tight, close competition, and it was really exciting for that reason. I don't know how it was perceived and what you thought of it, Ed.
Yeah, well, despite the fact, Natalie, that here in Asia, no obviously Asian teams playing in the European Championships, everyone was watching. They're all Premier League fans here, so obviously they watched the countries and supported the countries that had their favorite Premier League players in them. The England shirts here in Singapore sold out within the first couple of days of the tournament, so it goes to show how many England fans there were here in Singapore. Can I just say something which might get me in trouble, but if I don't name specific places, I think I should be okay. There's a liquor licensing law here in Singapore where a lot of bars have to stop serving alcohol at 10 o'clock, which is obviously before the big games of the day at the Euros even start. So there were some bars, not saying that I frequented them, that brought the shutters down and pretended to be closed whilst serving alcohol and showing the Euros inside. And we were told not to make any noise, don't cheer, don't react at all to what was happening, which was quite easy when the final was taking place because all us England fans were pretty silent for the whole thing.
Yeah,
I think it's impressive the amount of content that was consumed over the summer when you talk about the Olympics, the Paralympics, the Copas, the Euros. I don't know, is there an unending appetite for sport? I mean, it seems like no one said ever to me that I heard of, I'm done. I don't want any more. Bring on Christmas. I'm just done with sports in the summer. People continued to watch, and if you show it, they will watch.
Well, when you lose successive Euros, then you do get to a point where you're like, nah, I'm done. That's from an England fan's perspective, of course. I just quickly wanted to mention Yamal once more because he had an incredible tournament, a breakthrough tournament, it's fair to say. He became the youngest player to ever win a European Championship at the age of 17 years and 1 day. He was the first 16-year-old, because he turned 17 during the tournament, to play at a men's Euros. He also was the youngest to have an assist in the tournament in Euros history. Also became the youngest goal scorer in European Championship history. I mean, he has just broken records upon records upon records. Only 17. He's got a great future ahead of him. And the Spanish men's team doing really well. The Spanish women's team likewise, because they won the World Cup not so long ago. And they're going to be going into a Euros in 2025 full of optimism, no doubt. It's a pretty good time to be a fan of Spanish football. In fact, of Spanish sport when you think about Carlos Alcaraz and such like as well. So, yeah, they're all toasting success while us English folk are a little bit glum. Okay, it's that time in the podcast where we've got a couple of minutes to bring you any other business, and I'm going to be focusing on Silverstone because, of course, we had the British Grand Prix of 2024, and it was won by Sir Lewis Hamilton for a record 9th time. You'd had to go back to 2021 for the last time he'd won a Grand Prix, and in fact the last time he'd even won at Silverstone as well. But he came through to beat Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, and it was an emotional victory for him because it's his last in the car of Mercedes as he's moving to Ferrari in 2025. And he, as I say, was full of emotion, thanking all of the team at Silverstone for getting him over the line and winning that one. But it was a marvellous victory for him. And as I say, for a record 9th time, that is pretty impressive for someone to be so dominant at one circuit. The Australian Oscar Piastri, by the way, won an F1 race for the first time this season as well at the Hungarian Grand Prix. So another potential person to be looking out for as well.
Well, for me, Natalie, it's got to be Slovenian Tadej Pogačar winning his 3rd Tour de France title. That was my favorite non-Olympic moment. He had a great duel with Denmark's Jonas Vingegaard and Belgian Remco Evenepoel. It's a 21-stage grueling race, and this is the one thing that can take the Tour de France from finishing on the Champs-Élysées, its normal finishing area, the Olympics. Because of security concerns, they said you can't bring the Tour de France this close to the Olympics. We're just getting ready for the big show. So they were forced to finish the Tour de France in Nice. But it was an amazing race, 2,100 miles, 3 weeks. The Tour de France record breaker, Mark Cavendish, though, Ed, your part of the world, he brings down the curtain in grand style.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a coup it was for Singapore to have the Manx missile sign off from cycling right here in our city. It's called the Tour de France Prudential Singapore Criterium, which is always a bit weird to have the Tour de France in Singapore, but it's ridden on the street circuit. Some of the world's best cyclists are here, and quite fitting for a man who seems to have one of the best script writers in sport. Mark coming home first in his final ever professional race. It might not have been the same number of fans that line the Champs-Élysées, or as you mentioned, in Nice this year, but the Manx missile has a lot of fans. And can I just say, He is one of the most generous sportsmen there is. Considering all that he's achieved, he would have every right to be a little bit arrogant, tell people, sorry, no photos, no autographs. But he so generously stopped for every single person who came up to him, wanted them to sign their racing jerseys or their bikes or their helmets or just take a photo. And he was absolutely lapping up what would be his final appearance in probably the hottest conditions he's ever raced in.
Well, that's it for this episode. Make sure to subscribe to the show via your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode.
Yeah, next time we'll finish our review of sport in 2024 with a whirlwind trip around the globe, including basketball, baseball, and the new domestic football season. We'll also head to Australia to review the end of the NRL season and the Melbourne Cup, plus the Women's T20 World Cup.
And we'll address the small matter of Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk, the rematch. But until then, from Ed, Todd, and myself, and the whole of this Sporting Planet team, thanks for listening.